Hola, you are listening to FirstGen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host, and I'm so excited because today's guest is Jazz Ornelas. Jazz, how are you doing today, mujer?
Hola, I am really excited, a little bit nervous, but really excited to get into these conversations and chat with you.
So let's start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your cultura.
I am originally born and raised in East LA, Los Angeles, California. My parents are from Zamora, Michoacan. So I am a first gen Latina. Grew up in areas where in East LA, I saw a lot of, Latinos. So I felt home, I felt that I can, be a part of the culture, but there was always that part growing up that I felt like I couldn't fit in, or the assimilation, or even the telenovelas growing up of what I had to look or what I had to be. It's not until recently that I've really stepped into this is me, this is who I am without comparing myself or looking at what others' version of Latina is.
Mm-hmm.
I am a content creator. I am a mom of two. I'm a wife. I started content creating on TikTok, and it's something that for me, speaking about content creators and Latina content creators, because I saw that there was no representation within the app. I was craving community. I was craving people that I can relate to, non-trending songs. Like I wanted songs that, Senora Saturday, songs that Juan Gabriel, things that I can relate to.
Yeah.
But within the app, I started, asking like who else is this way? And it's been such a beautiful journey to be able to now to say there is an incredible Latina creator community,
Mm.
and we're taking space on the platform. So I also, from that, birthed my podcast. I'm also a podcast host called the
Yay.
Latina Creator. So yeah, that's in the short snap of all the little things that I'm passionate about in my life. I'm a multi-passionate queen.
Yes. Well, okay, there are two things that I want to dig deeper into. One, I'm from East LA too. Yeah, girl. And I remember I saw one of your videos and I was like, oh, I need to bring this up to her because, yeah, I'm from East LA too. I moved out of there when I was 11, so I didn't get the full experience out there, but my family stayed in East LA, so there's always been a connection there,
Yeah,
always, even
they're
now.
always home. It's always home.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting for you to say that you always felt like an outcast or maybe just a little bit different. And I'm wondering if you can dig into that a little bit deeper because, to be honest, when I lived in East LA, I don't think I felt that. It wasn't until I moved out of East LA where I was like, oh, the whole world isn't full of Latinos? What?
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
so what was your experience?
I think it might be because I'm a first gen, right? So I think it's because my parents had these expectations of what success meant. And when I would see success, it would not be Latinas, it would be other people, And so for me, it was really hard to, I don't know, find role models, especially in such pivotal years of self-confidence, like learning to love my skin, just certain physical things that, growing up as a teen, I have these expectations of my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always been like I I'm the youngest, and I've always been like my mom laughs. She's like, siempre haces lo que sea. Like I have my own beat. I do things differently. So I feel like it's also that I've always challenged myself or challenged the norms or wanting to do things differently. Just like very much now in TikTok, right? I very much saw that there was no representation, and I was like, why isn't nobody saying this? Why can't there be more representation, So as a young age, I felt all those things, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know, I didn't have the emotional intelligence to say, this is what I'm feeling. Let me process it and
Mm.
also love myself completely.
I see. I see. You know, I have a similar experience, but probably in the opposite way. And there's this like little insecurity that I'll share on this episode, which is I'm light skinned, right? And so for me, I was never Mexican enough to others. And I know there's still like privilege in that, and that there's different experiences had. But at the same time, my father, for example, is not my skin color. And so we were experiencing discrimination.
Yeah, for sure. And now, like each generation, we feel it. Now with my two kids, my son is lighter, my daughter is more my skin tone, so you can see it, you can see the difference. But I feel like now that I am a part of a generation that I am going to therapy. I am, breaking the cycles or generational traumas, doing my best that I can in my motherhood journey,
Yeah.
that I feel like I can have these conversations where it was a lot harder with my mom to comprehend because I mean, she came from Mexico at such a young age that she was just trying to do her best.
Yeah.
And there was no real communication of what I was feeling as a first gen at my teens.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. You mentioned your parents' expectations of you or what they wanted from you. What were they?
I mean, of course, their American dream would be like me going to college and having been a doctor or something along those lines. But I've always been creative. I've always loved the idea of creating income online. I've always loved to just do things differently. I didn't graduate from college, so um, I've always been able to look at different ways and avenues, through affiliate marketing or whatever it may be. Like right now, it's content creating,
Yeah.
and that's different. That's not the quote unquote secure financial security for my parents. Now they kind of understand because they'll watch Despierta America and they'll see how like artists will come to the television and they promote their shampoos o algo.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "Oh, okay, algo así haces?" Like, kind of, yeah.
Más o
So,
menos.
yeah. So they don't understand, but I think now they see that I am happy and they
Hmm.
realize that I'm happy, I'm safe, and they trust that no matter where I'm going, that they know that I can look for solutions or, find ways so that I can figure out my processes and stuff like that. But
Mm.
it's been a journey, right? Because they were brought up differently. I shared a story that my dad, he was very young. His first employment was selling newspapers because of the poverty in Mexico.
Yeah.
So for my dad, I understand that that's very important for him to have that security because it's something he didn't have. You don't know if you're going to eat your next meal or your shelter. Or for my mom at one point, her and her family, ended up sleeping in a cemetery with my grandma. So
Mm.
it was coming from a really hard background for them. So
Yeah.
I understand where their fears come from, where their anxieties come from, but it's also hard as a first gen for me to say, I need you to believe in me
Yeah.
and believe in where I'm going. I think that's something that I've had the conversation with my therapist to say, you know, uh, that my parents, they haven't been able to, you know, because of how they were raised, they don't show that much affection or that much love because of how they were raised too.
Yeah.
So now it's very much it for me. When I have conversations with them, I have to. It almost feels like an out of body experience because I know where they're
Mm.
coming from, but not to take it so personal.
Mm.
And and then for me as a mom, to also give compassion to them, but also say, how do I want to react and how do I want to change the trajectory of my motherhood experience with my kids?
Yeah, absolutely. You're like kind of navigating different worlds all at the same time, like kind of parallel realities, right? That's what I feel
Yes,
like. Yeah.
yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So many things.
So you mentioned it's a journey, and I'm sure it is. And I think that when you get to that phase of parents, I need you to trust in me, and I got this. Before being able to do that, I think you have to be able to do that for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Trusting
Yeah.
yourself and allowing
Yeah.
yourself to know that you got this. So, can we maybe take a step back and talk a little bit about one, if you resonate with a healing or awakening journey? And then two, when do you think that started for you?
I feel like I have had a lot of, it hasn't been like one light bulb moment for me. It's been, season after season. And I feel like a little bit about my stories. I've had
Mm-hmm.
depression since I was a teen.
Okay.
And with my depression, that's not something, again, there was a huge stigma of, hey, mom, dad, I feel sad. I don't know why I feel sad. It was, ya levántate, ponte a limpiar, do something.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to cope with my feelings. I didn't know how to, my feelings were not validated. I didn't know how to cope with my feelings. So I was
Yeah.
just kind of brushing them under the rug. And as the years passed, I remember when I was in high school, I felt so, so sad. And I just said, I want to try out for cross country. And I knew, like by then in high school, everybody talks about, working out, how it's healthy and all that stuff. And so, I mean, I was not an athlete at all by any means, but I was like, I want to do this for myself. I don't
Mm.
want to do it just, and I remember telling the coach, I don't even care if I'm on the team. I just want to run.
Mm.
And I'm sure he was just kind of thrown off by that, and I longed for community. I longed to have that proof to myself that I can do it.
Yeah.
So I did. I remember when I first started to practice my first maybe like 3 miles, it was probably like 50 minutes. It took a long time for me. I believe I went down to 28 minutes or something like that.
Wow.
And that felt so good. That it felt so good that it felt like an awakening because I was able to show myself that I can do this for myself. I didn't need permission from my parents. I didn't need permission from anyone.
Yeah.
And that there was something powerful when I would run, because cross country is long distance running, right? So when I would run, I would just process all of what I was feeling, release any anxieties or energy that I was storing in my body.
Yeah.
And then by the time that I was done, I was like, wow, and like I said, I was never in any sports. I've never been in any sports, but that was just one that I was like, I'm gonna try it out. So I would say that was like the big pivotal point for me because that really gave me insight of with my mental health that I knew I needed to be active. So
Mm.
I'm 34 years old, and since then, like I've always had an active routine in terms of like me working out, right? So I work out maybe like 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay.
And there was a time growing up too where in my 20s I would feel like, for the vain things like I want to be fit, I want to do this. But through the seasons of life, through motherhood and again postpartum depression
Mm.
and going through the motions of navigating through my mental health, I realize now that in my 30s, wellness and my mental health goes hand in hand. And in order for me to like feel and operate good for my kids, that
Mm-hmm.
means that I need to take the time to either go to my therapist or take my medication. I'm on antidepressants, or do I look at what I need every day. I'm like, do I need to work out? How am I emotionally right now?
Mm.
What do I need so that I can feel good and operate during the day? And
Yeah.
that's not something my mom or my dad taught me. They just grew up like trying to survive, right? Like trying to get through the motions. My mom trying to get all the kids ready, fed, and homework time and stuff like that. So, like, for me now, I have to look at what is my emotional health? What can I do to balance? Because we try to figure out life, but you know, I think that that's a different approach that I've learn through dark, hard seasons. And that's not something that I learned from growing up too. The healing
Mm-hmm.
part and the awakening part.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you mentioned something that comes up with all of my coaching clients, that are typically first gens. Their internal world was never validated, right?
Mhm.
There was never time. And when I mention this, I know that there's some resistance for some people. I mention it not because I'm ungrateful. We
Yeah.
can be grateful and also recognize that there were things that are still impacting us now, maybe, and
Yeah.
that we have to
Yeah.
do, like you, a conscious daily effort to change
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So I recognize that a lot of our parents just didn't have space or time, or maybe the the awareness that they needed to make room for our own reality
Yeah.
as first gens, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of us like will push that down until it bubbles up and bursts, and it's like something's got to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's unre up until recently, I guess my latest awakening was going to therapy. And it's
Mm,
something that I've always known, like I should go, I should go, I should go. And I was always scared. And I realized the root of me being scared was me telling my parents that I was going to therapy.
mm,
And so I was always hesitant because I was like, I was scared of what they were going to say, not me actually going to therapy, but their opinion of me going to therapy.
yeah.
So when I think it was about 4 months ago, that's when I felt like I hit a really hard time in my mental health. And I go through everything, right? Like, I'm like, I'm not feeling well. I've tried to do, everything that I usually,
The
try to
go-tos.
the go-tos, a hot
Yeah.
girl walk, you work out or journal, gratitude, affirmations, like the list I've done it all, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is not working out and I need help.
Mm,
So I reached out and I found a Latina therapist that I connected with. And um, the first session was the hardest, the
yeah.
most hardest part because I just had to lay it all out. But through the journey, I mean, the first session, she was also able to say you need to see a psychiatrist and you
Mm,
need medication as well. And she said it
okay.
in a loving way. She was just like, you're gonna be okay. We're gonna get you through this. You're gonna feel good. It was never coming from a place of judgment or fear because at least for me, there was a huge stigma with mental health of like, oh, you cannot tell any doctors that you're sad because van a decir que estás loca, te van a quitar los niños, and then all this stuff. So I
Mm,
have all of these like little voices in my head of like why I should never talk about my sadness, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And then, when I was there, she was recommending, she's like, you are depressed and you need the medication. So I got on medication and, I feel the best I have ever felt in my 34 years.
Wow.
It was the hardest part, right? Because I had to tell, going back to my parents, their opinion of them,
Yeah.
I had to tell them because my mom noticed when I was really sad and she was like, ¿estás bien? ¿Qué pasa? And moms know and I was like, Mom, estoy bien. And then I finally couldn't lie anymore. And she was like, I was like, Mom, estoy yendo a terapia, I'm taking medication. And she could not fully understand it, and she was
Mm,
scared. And luckily my siblings came in and my sister's a nurse and it really explained it in a way of like, when you're sick with the cold or flu or whatever, you go to the doctor, right? And she's like, we can do that for our mind. There's nothing wrong because she needs that support. And she
mm,
was like, and if she needs medication, she's like, that's okay. My mom's diabetic. And so she was like, you sometimes need your medication for your diabetes. And so she was like, that's Jazz, and she's going to be perfectly fine, So it was really good that she got that knowledge. But then
yeah.
I think that the best thing and the most I guess, freeing part was that I told my mom that I was on medication. And after that call, I felt so proud. I felt
Mm,
so, it almost like I took off so much like weight on myself, and then I
yeah.
was like, it almost made me open the doors to more healing because
Yes.
this whole part, I was fearful of their opinion. And now I told them, and I'm like, okay, now I can dig deeper and just, I'm going in, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that for you. One, I'm really happy that you feel really good, and I think that it's beautiful that you had the inertia to be like, okay, whatever it takes, right? I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make myself feel better. And two, I'm glad you had the support too, because I think not everyone knows that if they'll have that support, for example, from your sister explaining to your mom and,
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, it's a team effort here
Yeah.
of helping her understand what route you're taking.
Yeah. I was so grateful for it. Like, I have two brothers and one sister, and they kind of were just like, she's gonna be fine. They all called me and they checked on me and they're like, you're okay, you're okay. It's like, I'm fine, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
good. And but that also includes like my husband, it takes a
Mm-hmm.
village, the support from him to say, it doesn't matter that one thing that we also had to learn is investing in our mental health
Mm-hmm.
because again, growing up, that we didn't talk about it, nor did we see, hey, if we need it, we're gonna pay for it, right? We see it so often, the normal of like, go get a coffee, go get a Starbucks, go get this. You need it, go spend it.
Yeah.
But I didn't see, hey, if you need a therapist, go make that investment because it's gonna pay you tenfold. I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful that my husband was like, it doesn't matter if you need to go every week, we'll figure it out. Well, right now, this is what you need. This is the support that you need right now. And it's been, I get really, I shared on my stories that I get really frustrated because my insurance was not covered. Nothing was covered in my
Mm,
insurance. So it's been literally, me, everything paying, all my mental health journey thus far has been me paying out of pocket, which makes me more passionate about because I'm like, why aren't there more resources? Because obviously our community is being affected by this.
yeah.
And it's not easily disposable.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful that my family, my husband, and everyone has been through this journey right now to help me navigate through my mental health. And it's a journey that I'm always going to continue to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one important thing you said too is that once you open the door, then it gets easier, right? So, one thing that I've talked about with previous guests is that threshold sometimes feels really hard. The barrier to, what is it? The barriers to entry, right? They seem
Yes.
maybe a lot. Whether it's, I've never heard of something like that, I don't even know where to start, it's going to
True.
cost me money. So, I think that, that's part of the mission here is to spread awareness on mental health and maybe lower the barriers to entry the more
Yeah.
possible by, I had a therapist on the podcast as well. So just like letting everyone know there are people that share our story and that understand and that are in the mental health field as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's you're opening these opportunities for conversations for people that I can relate to and for resources that I probably never knew existed. So for me to hear somebody else say they've had these same thresholds, but they also have had such a beautiful growth through it,
Mm,
it
yeah.
also tells me that and it's that whole thing like if she can do it, pues yo también,
Yeah.
like I will get there. And that's just that's a hope. Like what you're doing in this podcast is you're giving us hope for other listeners for healing because that it's possible. I feel that yeah, we're all worthy of healing and growing and evolving.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Handing out hope. Someone else had said like permission slips, right? Like permission
Yeah.
slips to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my hope. I mean, I want, that's why I like that guests share their story because if a listener sees themselves reflected, then they can also tune into what resources were most helpful for you, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we can start dabbling into that. What is a healing modality, whether it's therapy or something else, that you find yourself coming back to on a regular basis?
My seasons change, right? Because of
Yeah.
motherhood, right? So my seasons change, but I feel now in my current state that I feel like I cannot navigate or regulate, I should say the word is regulate my emotions. I feel like I would right immediately find a therapist to talk about it because I always
Mm,
had this idea that a therapist had to like fix me in one session or I don't know. I had this idea of like in one session that they would not understand me. But when you're
mm,
feeling all of these feelings or trying to regulate, there's something so awesome to be in a place in a setting with a therapist to just release. And for me, sometimes I can't share these thoughts with my husband. I can't share these thoughts with my besties or anything like that. I need somebody who is from an outside perspective, doesn't know me, that I can just release.
yeah.
And then I love, at least my therapist asks me questions that I never would ask myself or that my friends or family would ask because my friends or family will always ask because they love me, right? They always want to, they're like, oh, they got my back, right? But
Right.
a therapist is going to ask you the right questions to challenge your thoughts and to, think differently, So
Mm-hmm.
every time that I go, when I go, I feel like she asked me a question. I'm like, I get like, whoa,
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way. Or, one of the conversations that we've had was about how now in my 30s, my entire, journey of why I struggle is because, I just wanted to be loved. I saw my
Mm,
mom struggle with her mental health journey, and I never really saw her love herself.
yeah.
And I never saw her give herself compassion or rest or healing or to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she was always like heightened stress. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, because I never had like that emotional connection with her or the physical connection of like, te quiero mucho, you
Yeah.
know, that internally I took it as, well, she may not love me.
Mm,
And until this year, when I to talk to my therapist, at the end, like I cried because the little girl in me was just craving for her mom to hug her every now and then, just say, I love you,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So those are things that, like, yes, I journal and I do gratitude journals and I have body movement. Sometimes I force myself to go out in the sun because, vitamin D. But like when you're in the thick of it, of like, I am having a breakdown.
Yeah.
I wish I could have done this sooner for myself and just made an appointment, like listen to my intuition, make an appointment as soon as possible and just be like, I need to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be like my 911 thing. Like my immediate response now is I need to go to a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's super important what you just said of like your expectation versus reality, right? So maybe there's a lot of expectation build up when you hear about therapy. I hadn't even considered it, to be honest. Like, what would be some of the people's different interpretations of therapy? I think like when I made the jump to therapy, I didn't necessarily know what to expect, but I also didn't fear it because I had heard other people talk about it. But I
Mhm.
can definitely understand thinking like, what is it going to be like? Am I going to feel like uncomfortable? Am I going to leave feeling worse? Right. So there may
Yeah.
be like different questions that pop up. So that's important to keep in mind. Yeah.
I just felt like I had the fear of like, was I going to be interrogated to feel even worse? You know, like, are they
Mm-hmm.
going to make me, I guess, coming from like a parent figure, parents always ask you questions and then I end up feeling, guilty or worse. So because it's an adult figure who is, going to help me, I had this preconceived notion of that. But when I just sat down and just talked to her and she really made me feel safe and she was like, you're safe here. And that was another
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like my core feelings, my inner core feelings is that I always want to feel safe, loved, and accepted. And
Yeah.
so because now I've been doing this like mental health journey and inner work journey, it's like bled into how I navigate motherhood because I have toddlers. I have a 7 year
Mm.
old and I have a 3 year old. And, they get angry sometimes. And if I had not gone to therapy, seeing them get frustrated, I would get frustrated. So,
Mm.
because I didn't know how to control my emotions, I couldn't teach my daughter how to control theirs. So we
Yeah.
would all end up like frustrated, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
But now, I feel the gift has been I have a moment of pause where my daughter, when she gets frustrated, and I listen to her, and I'll say like, "Are you angry? Are you sad? What's making you angry?" And then she'll tell me like, "Ma, Cruz, my son, Cruz took me," and so then she's able to express herself, and then we'll come to a solution. And then, I make her feel loved, saved, and validated,
Mm.
accepted.
Yeah.
But none of that would have been there without that threshold that you mentioned.
How beautiful. I'm recognizing right now that you're in that period of awareness, it sounds
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
right? And recognition. And also, it sounds like your therapist is helping you find the roots of different
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite. I'm not a therapist, but I am a coach for FirstGens. And honestly, like to me, that is so powerful because how I see healing sometimes is like, picture like a garden and there's just
Hmm.
like things sprouting out of it, and you don't necessarily know why, but you're like, oh, there's always weeds in this corner. And then like,
Yeah.
oh, there's always like onions over here. I don't want onions. But when you, I think, become aware and then dig into healing and therapy, you start to look for why is there weeds there? Let me go look, right? Let me
Yeah.
go see. And so you're able to identify, oh, okay, it's because there's these factors here.
Yeah.
Can I change them? Can I modify them? Do I want them, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I love that. Also, obviously, you bring the motherhood aspect to it all. And it's beautiful to hear that that is impacting also your children in a positive way.
I feel like that was one of the reasons why I had to go to therapy because I knew it almost like I had to draw a line in the sand. Like either I repeat this cycle of what I was raised with
Yeah.
or I change it. And that was hard, because I felt
Mm,
broken. I felt like, what is wrong with me? Why can't it triggered so many insecurities, right? Like,
mm,
what is I'm not enough as a mom. What's wrong with me? Why can't I mother correctly? Why do I get so frustrated? And then I would fall into like guilt,
yeah.
and it was a lot. It was a lot, but I feel like I wish I heard these conversations in motherhood and Latinas because there has to be these conversations to say, hey, we I know what you're feeling. And because you're trying to regulate emotions, it doesn't make you less of a mother. It
Mm,
doesn't make you less than anything like that. It just makes you human and we're learning and we're growing. And so if we can listen to that inner voice to say, hey, like, okay, let me figure it out. What is it, the tool, the resource? Who do I need to speak to or what podcast should we listen to? Um,
yeah.
but I feel like these are conversations that need to be had.
Yeah. I think it's important, that relentless pursuit of whatever is needed for my own journey. You know, I think
Yeah.
you, for example, use the tools that are always mentioned, journaling, meditation, right? Like these different tools that maybe you're like, okay, yeah, they help a little bit, but something isn't changing. You know, I need
Yes.
something bigger or different. So thankfully you kept looking and you found therapy. For other
Yeah.
people, it might be they did therapy first and then now they're on this still journey of searching. So yeah, maybe a relentless pursuit of what it is that you need for yourself,
Mhm.
and understanding that help is not, like you said, doesn't make you less than in any way. It's
Mhm.
um, it's something that I think a lot of us feel uncomfortable with too, though. And I
Mhm.
think it comes from, you know, the examples that we had growing up. So
Yeah.
so yeah, hopefully also understanding that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, and yeah, it's accepted. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that now, like, you're getting space held for you, and now you're holding space for your children, right? Like your
Mhm.
daughter. And that's so beautiful, because I think that's also something that we lacked, space holding in a non judgmental and safe feeling place.
Absolutely. And my daughter is very much like me. Like I always say I'm a sensitive soul. Like
Mm-hmm.
I will cry a movie that I've seen 10 times. Each time I cry
Yeah,
the same way.
me too.
So my daughter is the same. And my husband's like, son igualitas. But it it just to me now I see it, like I see myself in her, and it motivates me. It
Mm-hmm.
motivates me to say like I want her to feel loved, because I mean the world's always changing, and there's always going to be something, as I feel like that's a mom worry, right? Like the world's always changing. She's growing so fast, but if I can teach her those core feelings and teach my daughter to be a good person, know that she's loved, know she's beautiful, know that she's smart, like all of those things, I feel like she's gonna grow up like I feel that I did a good job.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'm a work in progress, and we're learning together. We're a team.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And definitely having a lot of patience, I would say, because knowing that you've been in therapy for a couple of months, I'm sure, you know, when there's awareness, there's not always immediate change, too. Like there may be times where you just aren't able to do steps 1 through 4 like you were taught, right? Or the ones that you
Yeah.
know work. Sometimes there's this awareness where it's like, dang it, I wasn't able to react the way I would have wanted to.
Oh
But it
yeah.
takes time, you know, it takes time and patience.
Um, Before I went to therapy, that's how I also knew that I had to, get support because I was losing it. I was yelling or frustrated and angry. And I was like, why am I getting so frustrated? Like I couldn't control
Mm,
it. And
yeah.
that was a huge thing where I knew that I needed to change how I felt. And that's why now that I am on antidepressant medication, it helps me to kind of create that, like balance my emotions, right? So it's not a feeling of like butterflies and rainbows or anything like that. It just
Yeah.
keeps me, it allows me to see what's logical and what's not. And especially with my emotions, I just felt like I would always take my comfort emotion was I'm not enough. I must be doing something wrong.
Mm,
It would go there, very dark place.
mm-hmm.
And motherhood would trigger me into everything, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's my everyday life, right? If I wouldn't do anything and then my daughter would get frustrated and then it would go. So for me, I knew that with the medication, I knew that if Lexapro wouldn't work, I was willing to be resilient to say, like, I'm going to try another medication
Mm,
till I find that something works. Because again, I went 33 years without asking for help in
yeah.
therapy or a psychiatrist, just living through it. And it was exhausting and hard and broken. And it during my pregnancy, it heightened a lot. And I remember vividly just sitting with like my pancita and just crying and not knowing
Hmm.
why I was crying, you know? So it's not like, I know we share like lo dulce right now, but there was a lot of tears and confusion and brokenness and navigating through that to get to here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like now that we're here, wish I would have been able to just not be so fearful of opinions or the idea of seeking help or asking for help, you know? Like at
Yeah.
the end of the day, we're all just trying to be better.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's part of, what I'm trying to do here is also show the not so pretty parts,
Mhm.
because we can say like, oh, I've set the boundaries or I've done, the whatever stuff you've taken,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
good parts, there's a lot that like the journey, right? The journey that it
Yeah.
takes you to get there, whether it's validating your own emotions, having hard, difficult conversations, going through the downs when you think you were about to experience an up, like maybe motherhood, right? Or this new
Hmm.
medicine, and then it being even harder sometimes, like, oh, that's
Hmm.
not what I expected. So, yeah, definitely knowing that there's trial and error in every journey and
Absolutely.
being okay with that and not taking it as, well, that's it, nothing works, right?
Yeah.
Like constantly pursuing better. So in terms of resources or things that you do for yourself, you mentioned like a go-to list that you're like, okay, I worked out, I went to the sun. What is a habit that you do on a regular basis that you think is really helpful to you?
I do, like I said, I do my gratitude. It's important for me to write them down because we all have limiting beliefs, right? And we all have a place of comfort of the story that we repeat ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when your circumstance feels like you're in the negative, or you feel like you see what's going wrong in your life, it kind of makes you want to look at everything that's going wrong. And then you think, like, my life is wrong, right?
Mm,
So for me, I feel like I need to challenge my thoughts and my beliefs by writing them down. And it doesn't have to be like, I'm so grateful for, it doesn't have to be something so big. It can be
yeah.
just the practice of seeing the small, beautiful things of gratitude. Like my warm home right now in Vegas. I'm from Las Vegas.
Mm.
I currently reside in Las Vegas, and we wake up now at 30 degrees. It is
Wow.
cold, I'm
Yeah.
like, my warm bed. I'm so grateful, or another thing that I'm grateful for is when I put my son down to nap or to sleep, he's like, "Okay, mom, hug and kiss." And he'll always say, "I love you, mom. I love you, mom. I love you. I
Hmm.
love you, Cruz." And so I love yous. And so those things that I'm like, okay, I am rich. I'm rich in love. I'm rich in my home. I'm rich in this, So like I step into that frequency of like, I'm abundant. Actually, I'm super good.
Yeah.
So I'm not in a place of lack, but there's nothing wrong. And I'm gonna switch this story that I'm wanting to go to.
Yeah.
So that really challenging my words, my thoughts and into gratitude. And I know for me, I have to at least do some sort of body movement at least 3 to 4 times a week. So either my husband and I sometimes we take the kids to the gym, and I walk on the treadmill for a few minutes, like an hour long, and I listen to audiobooks, or
Hmm.
sometimes I just put on like Bad Bunny, and I'm like,
Yeah.
listening. But it's that time to just, you know, be in a releasing.
Yeah.
Um, so body movement. If I also look at in my planner, I have the manifesting planner. It's right here with me. And in
Mm.
my planner, every month, I love this planner. Every time I have a chance to talk about it, I love it. So every month it has a reflecting your month,
Uh-huh.
and it has the wheel of life. You're probably familiar with it.
Yeah.
So it allows me to see, reflect on everything in my life, like career, finance, personal growth, family, relationships, health. And that way I can see where I assess all my all those categories, and I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
say like, okay, this month, what do I need to focus on? Because we can have, you start the year with like, I have all these goals. And then somewhere along the year, it's like, what happened to those goals?
Yeah.
So for me, every month I assess like if my mental health comes first, obviously by my wheel of life, I everything must follow that, right? So content creating may not be first, or this may not be first because my priority right now is my mental health.
Hmm.
So if I feel like that's a line, then I don't feel behind. I don't feel like things are going wrong. I feel like, no, this is what I need in my season of life right now, and I'm content with that.
I like how you're saying, like, well, you kind of take it into bite size and organize it in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, where it's like, let me just focus on one aspect. And if the
Yeah.
rest aren't as active, it's okay. I like that.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's something that I had to do with my content creating because, before I had like my breakdown, I was building very consistent posting on TikTok, and I was posting every day and once a day, every day for the entire week, right? But then I just could not do it with my mental health anymore.
Mm.
And, I knew that I needed to take it a pause and by reflecting and assessing. And I was like, well, for these upcoming months, if I could do 3 postings a week or 4 postings a week, that's cool. Because right now, what's priority is my emotional health, and then
Yeah.
it's not like I need to post 7 times a week or I need to hit certain views or likes or follows because that's not the season that I'm in right now. The season that I'm in right now is I gotta focus on my heart and my mind and my soul.
Yeah. You need to be good. I love that. Yeah. There's so much I was like thinking of 10 different things to talk about right now, but in the essence of time, we'll just keep going. The next question I have for you is, what is a favorite song that you listen to feel inspired or like a pick me up?
Oh, I don't know if I have, like, if it's picking me up, I mean, Bad Bunny all day, every day, okay? Pero, and then this is my playlist, okay? So if it's not Bad
Okay.
Bunny, then I'm like listening to cumbias, right? And if it's not
Mm,
that, then I'm very much like an um, indie Spanish playlist. So
okay.
like Los Panchos, stuff like that my dad would listen to. That's pretty much a lot of my music taste.
Okay.
So it goes to like super calm, super mellow, and then perreo and cumbias.
All right, all right. What about a favorite quote or advice that you refer back to that you really like?
I always refer back to the quote that, what is it? Get up, fall 8 times, or no, fall 7 times, get up eight.
Mm,
That's stuck with me since like high school. And I think I mean, it shows, right? To like even my 3 mile run, and it didn't have to, I wasn't trying to be the first on the team or anything like that. I just wanted to do this for me. And I
yeah.
wanted to get back up and feel good for me. And no matter what, through motherhood or marriage or whatever it may be, content creating, posting my content, you post some video and then you get like no views. Like I'm still gonna get up. I'm doing this for me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So that's one of my go-tos.
Okay. What about an influencer or someone that you follow that always leaves you positively inspired?
Oh man, there's so many. There's so many. I feel like right now the girls that I connect to the most are Ana Bañuelos, who's very local to me. And she always talks about, high frequency or healing or becoming her. So I always love having conversations with her about just this, right? It's very rare to find friendships who like to talk about personal development
Mm,
and, like to talk about where are we going? What's like, let's grow together. So when I met her, I was like, oh, I feel like I tell her, I was like, I feel like I manifested you because it feels beautiful to
yeah.
have a girl friend that sees good in you, but also sees like there is no triggered insecurities amongst each other. There is no like what is it like that girl high school feeling of
Mm,
tearing down, it's really let's lift each other up. What do you need? How can we support each other? That type of energy.
Yeah.
And then there's also Yerlin, who I talk to a lot. And I love talking to her because she always gives me so much wisdom. And we talk about how, the expectations of me not achieving my parents' dreams and goals and
Mm.
how I'm still learning to like process through it.
Mm.
And she tells me she'll say like she's my older sister, the older prima, and she'll say like one of the things she told me that stuck with me, she was like, my job or my career in my 20s was not my career in my 30s, and my career in my 30s was not my career in my 40s. So she was like, your career is not going to dictate like your heart or anything
Yeah.
like that. So your parents' expectations, like it should not weigh on you. And for me to, she's been an entrepreneur and she's had her catering business, her restaurant, and she's always, I see her and I'm just like, wow, And so for me, when I hear her wisdom, to me, I truly take it as, wisdom and encouragement to say, I have so much life ahead of me. Like, I can do this. And she was actually the one who encouraged me to also lead my workshops because I felt how would I say, I felt even with the my podcast, I felt like my fear was like, who's gonna listen to me? Who's
Mm.
gonna listen to me? Who's gonna want people, or who's gonna want me to teach them how to be a content creator? And she was like, me. She was like, I want you to teach me. But she
Yeah.
was very much, she poured belief in me, where I want to say it's her because that I have a podcast, and it's because of her that I started leading my workshops.
Mm.
So you need people like that in your corner that see in you so much that will say, go, you need to
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah. I
So
love
those
that.
are those are my girls.
Okay. So that's a beautiful segue to. I do have a short list of fun questions for you, but
Ooh.
before we head into those, it's a beautiful segue to what you're currently doing, where people can find you, and maybe tell us a little bit more about those workshops.
Ooh. So I am a content creator, but I found that I love that I love helping other creators negotiate with brands. And that's something that I was
Mm.
so scared of. Porque again, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have my kids. And so I wasn't in corporate America. I don't know how the lingo of how to send professional emails or anything like that. What I do have is heart and I do have is creativity. So I had the willingness to learn and figure it out. And through that process, I realized that I'm not the only one that has these fears,
Mm.
because a brand it feels like a brand, like they feel big, right?
Yeah.
As a creator, it feels like, well, I'm a little creator. Like, I feel like I need to shrink myself in some sense. And so through the process of me learning and gaining confidence, I was like, I can't be the only one that feels this, but two, I don't want my comunidad to feel that. So I started to, my greatest joys is when I have my inbox saying like, hey, I just got on a PR list, or
Oh.
I just got a collaboration. I had one of my students, what I call him, and one of my students, I helped her get to her first $2,000 collaboration. And I was like,
Yay.
because a win for her is a win for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had one of my other students too who got her first partnership. So that's what I mean. Like, I love that what was part of my story and why one of my videos went viral on TikTok was me saying, why aren't there more Latinas getting paid collaborations? That was it.
Mm.
I
Mm-hmm.
called it out. I told it like it is. And now my workshops are literally about, let me teach you how to get these paid collaborations and show
Beautiful.
you how to be confident, how to say like it's something that I'm passionate about, especially because if we don't talk about it in our, Latino community, then we can't change our the economy of creators for Latinas. So
Mm.
there needs to be transparency. There needs to be these hard conversations to say, hey, I'm getting paid this much. You need to ask for more. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And there is no envidia. There is nothing like that. Like to me, I want you to win and I want you to get paid more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what my heart is. So I do lead workshops. I have a podcast, and I
What is it
costume
called?
share.
The podcast?
My podcast is a Latina Creator. It's on Apple and Spotify.
Excellent. And where can people find you?
All the time on TikTok and Instagram. I'm at jazz.ornelas.
Okay, perfect. Well, I love what you're doing, and I think you stand out in the Latina creator community, as someone who is exactly that, someone who uplifts and is looking out for her community. So, thank you so much for what you do and for speaking out and doing your thing. I think it really opens the door for others to do it as boldly and loudly as you're doing it yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm always honored. I would not have a platform if it wasn't for this community. So for me, it's more of a motivation, more of a ways for me to find resources and tools so that I can give back and say like, hey, like let's do this together.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so for the last set of questions, they're just fast. Salsa verde o roja?
Verde,
Horchata o jamaica?
Jamaica,
Reggaeton or hip hop?
reggaeton,
Concha de vainilla o chocolate?
chocolate. Mm.
And what is your taco order?
Oh man, I'm basic. I like just tacos. Give them to me. Like just plain tacos con cebolla y cilantro, and my salsa. Like,
¿De qué? ¿Cuántos? We need the whole order, girl. You're pulling up
okay,
to a taco.
let me tell you. Okay,
You're pulling up to a taco stand.
if we're going to okay, I want a mulita.
Ooh, okay,
Okay,
okay.
I want a mulita, and then I want 2 tacos de carne asada, and let me see, what else would I get?
¿Con todo o la pura carne?
Uh, just the cebolla and the because I'm very picky.
Cilantro.
I don't like when the salsa is too immersed. I like to put my salsa.
Okay, okay.
Como las tortas ahogadas, I can't have them because it's too like immersed,
Yeah.
My husband loves it, but there's something about the texture that I don't like. So
Yeah.
I like my even spread.
That's funny. I get it though. Like for cereal, it needs to still be crunchy. I can't let it like
Yes,
soak into.
I'm the same way. I'm the same
Yeah.
way. I try to explain that to my daughter, and I was like, just a little bit milk halfway.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time to be on the podcast. It was so nice having you. Is there anything that you would like to say before we close it out?
I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful to be here and to be a part of what you're doing in this community. I can't wait to see everyone else's interviews or stories and just get more of the healing because that's what this is about, to be in this journey together and grow together. And what beautiful ways to do it for our first gen Latina comunidad.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly. All right, guys. Well, to those of you listening, cuídense mucho, que tengan un bonito día. Share this episode with your amigos, amigas, amigues. And remember, First Gen, I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye.
Bye.